You're watching the Stories That Scare channel. There is no turning back now.
Three more true Goosebumps horror stories. Hey everybody, I'm glad y'all stopped by. Last time, we explored three terrifying stories inspired by Goosebumps, the books that many of us couldn't wait to buy at the Scholastic Book Fair. The stories that kept us reading long after bedtime, and the covers that somehow managed to scare us before we even opened the first page. This year marks over 3 decades since Goosebumps first became a phenomenon. What started as a series of children's horror novels has grown into something much larger. Books, television shows, video games, board games, collectibles, movies, streaming series, and millions of readers who still remember exactly where they found their very first Goosebumps book. Tonight, we're returning to that world. But these aren't stories you'll find on any bookshelf. These are 3 original horror stories, inspired by Goosebumps. Whether these stories are true, I'll let y'all decide. Story 1. The Book Fair Box. Everyone remembers Book Fair Week. The gym transformed overnight. Metal shelves appeared from nowhere. Bright posters hung from the walls. And every table overflowed with books. Goosebumps always had the biggest crowd. One year, I didn't have enough money. I spent the entire week staring at the newest Goosebumps book, knowing I'd never be able to buy it. As the fair ended, the volunteers began packing everything into cardboard boxes. One elderly volunteer smiled at me. "You like Goosebumps?" I nodded. She disappeared behind a stack of boxes. A minute later, she returned carrying a small green box. No title, no barcode, no Scholastic logo. She handed it to me. "This one never made it onto the shelf." I looked inside. There was only one book. Its cover was completely black. No picture, no title. Just 4 silver words, "Do not display." Before I could ask what she meant, the woman was already helping another parent. I looked back. She was gone. No one else at the fair remembered seeing her. I slipped the book into my backpack. That night, I placed it on my desk. The cover slowly opened by itself. The first page contained only one sentence. "Congratulations. You checked out the only copy." The word sat there, perfectly centered on the page. "Congratulations, you checked out the only copy." I laughed. It was probably some promotional item. Maybe an early proof, or a prank. I turned the page. The first chapter was titled, "The Last Reader." It began exactly like any Goosebumps story. A kid visits a Scholastic Book Fair, finds a strange book, brings it home. I smiled. Clever. Then the story mentioned his elementary school. It wasn't a made-up name, it was mine. Kindred Elementary. I frowned. That was odd. I kept reading. The next page described his bedroom. Blue walls, a bookshelf beside the window, a baseball trophy on the dresser. Every detail matched mine. I slammed the book shut. Someone had to be messing with me. I shoved it into my backpack. The next morning, I carried it back to school, planning to give it to the librarian. When I opened my backpack, the book wasn't there. I searched every pocket. Nothing. I figured I'd left it at home. After school, I ran upstairs. The book was lying, exactly where I'd left it. Only now, it was open. A new sentence had appeared. "You tried to return it. Nice try." A chill ran through me. I flipped ahead. The pages were no longer blank. More chapters had appeared. Every one of them describing things that hadn't happened yet. Chapter 4. The Locker. It said, "After lunch, you'll hear knocking. Don't open it." I laughed nervously, then went to school anyway. After lunch, I walked down the hallway toward my locker. Knock, knock. Slow taps. From inside it, I froze. Someone nearby laughed. "You gonna open it?" I slowly reached for the combination lock, then remembered the book. "Don't open it." Instead, I walked away. That afternoon, the principal called everyone into the hallway. A maintenance worker had opened my locker. He couldn't explain it. Inside, there was nothing. No books, no backpack, no jacket, just dozens of Goosebumps books, every single cover, staring outward, as though they had been arranged to watch whoever opened the door. When I got home, The mysterious book was waiting on my bed. Another chapter had appeared. Its title, The Ending Changes, underneath, only one sentence. Good. You finally listened. When you're a kid, a Goosebumps book only lasts a few hours. You finish the last page, close the cover, and move on. Unless the book isn't finished reading. You. All right, let's move on to story number 2. This next story begins with an old VHS tape found hidden inside the case of a Goosebumps television episode. Story 2, The Lost Episode. When I was a kid, watching the Goosebumps TV show was almost as exciting as reading the books. Every Saturday, I'd race to the living room, bowl of cereal in one hand, remote in the other. The opening theme alone was enough to give me chills. The suitcase, the dog with glowing eyes, the swirling G. It was perfect. Years later, I started collecting old VHS tapes, mostly for nostalgia. One afternoon, at a flea market, I found a copy of Goosebumps, The Haunted Mask, still in its original clamshell case. The vendor smiled. That one's a little different. I assumed he meant the condition. For $5, I bought it. That night, I dusted off my old VCR. The familiar Goosebumps intro began playing. Everything looked normal, until the episode ended. Instead of stopping, the screen faded to black. White text appeared. Bonus episode. I frowned. There was never a bonus episode. Static filled the television. Then, a title slowly appeared. Don't Watch Alone. I searched online. Nothing. No record of an episode by that name. Curious, I pressed play. The picture quality looked different. Older, grainier. The opening shot showed a family sitting in a living room, watching Goosebumps. The father laughed. The kids argued over popcorn. The mother told everyone to quiet down. It felt almost too real. Then the camera slowly pulled backward. Not away from the family, away from the television they were watching. Someone was filming them. From outside the front window, I sat forward. The cameraman never spoke. He just stood there, watching, for nearly 3 minutes. Eventually, the father stood up, walked toward the window, and looked directly outside, straight at whoever was filming. The screen cut to black. Then, another scene. A different family, different house, different decade, watching Goosebumps. Again, the camera watched them from outside. Every family eventually noticed. Every family walked toward the window. Every episode ended the exact same way. I was about to eject the tape when I noticed something reflected in the television screen. Behind my couch, a silhouette, standing perfectly still. I spun around. Nothing. When I looked back, the television image had changed. The next family was mine. My living room, my couch, my coffee table. The exact same VHS tape playing on the TV. I watched myself sitting exactly where I was sitting, completely unaware. Then, the camera slowly began backing away, past my front porch, across the yard, toward the sidewalk, as though whoever had been filming was leaving, before disappearing into the darkness. The camera turned one final time, pointing back at my house. The front curtain slowly parted. Someone was standing in my front window, watching. The cameraman leave. If it wasn't me. The tape stopped, automatically rewound itself. When it reached the beginning, the VCR displayed something I'd never seen before. Now recording. I lunged for the eject button. Nothing happened. The machine continued humming. Then, from somewhere outside, I heard the unmistakable sound of a camcorder starting to record. There's something special about old VHS tapes. They preserve moments long after they're over. The scary part is wondering what else they might have preserved that nobody noticed the first time. We've got one last story, and it begins with a collector who thought he'd found an unopened Goosebumps board game until every player started drawing cards that already knew their names. Story 3, The Game of Goosebumps. Growing up, I thought Goosebumps was just books. Then the TV show came out. Later, movies, video games, board games, trading cards. It seemed like every few years, there was a new way to experience Goosebumps. So when I found an unopened Goosebumps board game at an estate sale, I bought it without thinking twice. The box looked old. The plastic wrap had yellowed with age. A faded price sticker read $14.99. The woman running the sale smiled. That game belonged to my grandson. He always said it was missing one player. I laughed. Maybe he lost a game piece. She didn't laugh back. That Friday night, a few friends came over. Pizza, soft drinks, the perfect excuse to relive our childhood. We opened the box together. Inside, everything looked brand new. Dice, cards, game pieces, rulebook. One thing immediately stood out. The game only included 4-player tokens, but the board itself had 5 starting spaces. One of my friends joked, "Guess the 5th player never showed up." We laughed, set everything up, and started playing. The first few turns were harmless. Draw a card, move 3 spaces, lose a turn, exactly what you'd expect. Then I landed on a black space. The rules said, draw from the fear deck. I pulled the top card. Instead of instructions, it simply read, "Michael, don't answer the phone tonight." Everyone looked at me. My name is Michael. I laughed nervously. Cute trick. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it ring. Voicemail. 30 seconds later. It rang again. Unknown number. Again, I ignored it. When I looked back at the table, the card had changed. Good choice. No one admitted touching it. We kept playing. Another friend landed on a black space. He drew a card. His smile disappeared instantly. It said, "Chris, your car door's unlocked." He pulled out his keys, pressed the lock button. His car horn chirped outside. He laughed. I must have forgotten. The card changed. Too late. We all looked out the front window. The driver's door was slowly swinging shut by itself. Nobody had gone outside. Nobody had been near the car. Suddenly, every game piece moved, on its own, 1 space forward. No hands touched them. No one spoke. Then, the 5th starting space filled itself. A game piece that hadn't been in the box. A tiny green monster. Its paint was badly chipped, as if someone had played with it for years. The spinner turned by itself. Landed on, "You're it." The lights went out. Complete darkness. Somewhere in the room, we heard another chair scrape across the floor. Then, a child quietly whispered, "My turn." The lights came back on. Every one of my friends was exactly where they'd been sitting. Except, there were now 5 glasses on the table, 5 slices of pizza missing, 5 scorecards, and 1 extra coat hanging by the front door. None of us spoke. We packed the game back into the box, drove it straight back to the estate sale house. The house was empty. A for sale sign stood in the yard. According to the neighbor, the elderly woman had passed away, almost 8 years earlier. I left the game on the porch. The next morning, it was sitting outside my front door, wrapped neatly in a plastic grocery bag. A handwritten note rested on top. It read, "You forgot the 5th player." Maybe that's why Goosebumps has survived for over 30 years. Whether you discovered it through the books, the television series, the movies, video games, or even an old board game, it has always been about one thing. Ordinary kids finding something they should have left alone. If you enjoyed these stories, let me know which one gave you the biggest goosebumps. Was it the book fair box, the lost episode, or the Game of Goosebumps? And tell me, how did you first discover Goosebumps? Was it through the books, the TV show, the movies, a video game, or maybe your very first Scholastic Book Fair? I'd love to hear your memories in the comments. Who knows? Your story might inspire a future episode. Until next time, keep the fires burning. And as always, I'll tell the stories, if you'll stay scared.